Yeah, guess who's back? It's Backchat's back and I'm better than ever. Gonna post content no matter the weather. Hard work, dedication, Floyd Mayweather. Bomb squad, about to put the game on a stretcher. AJ had a couple of off nights. Root switches, lights off and Usyk hitting with straight rights. Canelo chasing greatness but came up short. Javonte Davis knocks out Rolly, man, that's what I thought. Terence Crawford pound for pound on everybody's list. The big fish gonna do the talking with his fist. Teofimo still planning the takeover. Haney, Shakur and Davis are taking the game over. But guess who's back? I said guess who's back?
Hey, what's going on, guys? If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe and all that good stuff. We're going to get straight into it. So basically, Terence Crawford was in an interview and he basically outlined his version, his truth as they say, his version of what happened in terms of the negotiation between Errol Spence and Al Haymon, and why things didn't work out. And I'm going to kind of break down a little bit of what was said and what happens and why I think it makes perfect sense and why I believe what Terence Crawford is saying, but I also believe Errol Spence's side as well. This could potentially be a long video, but I don't actually want it to be a long video. I'm going to try and explain exactly what happened and why. A lot of it is just business related. It's not the fact that somebody is necessarily ducking the other person. So, in order to understand what happened, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to when Terence Crawford was with Top Rank and when he was signed to Bob Arum, right? So, Terence Crawford wanted to make the fight with Errol Spence. Yeah, more than Errol Spence wanted to make the fight with Terence Crawford, and it's not because Errol Spence is scared of Terence Crawford. It's not that. It's just that Errol Spence is actually the A side. He's the person who brings in the bigger pay-per-view. He has the bigger fan base. He is with Al Haymon. Yeah, he's younger. He has all the favor. He's an unbeaten champion. He has everything in his favor. Terence Crawford was with Bob Arum. He has less of a fan base. He brings in considerably less than Errol Spence does. So he is the B side. It doesn't matter who's won more, who's been more impressive. It's all about money. Money, leverage, and being the A side. This is the thing that people always confuse all this other stuff. But the truth is, these promoters do not care about anything apart from money, leverage, not losing leverage, and being the A side. These are the three components that are important. So I'm going to explain how this worked and exactly what happened in this negotiation. So it started with Terence Crawford wanting to fight Errol Spence, who is the A side. Now, Bob Arum tried to make the fight with Al Haymon, and he, suggested that they fight, and it suggested what the split would be, and they discussed the financial side. They went back and forward. The reason why they weren't able to agree is because Al Haymon wanted the financial split to be massively in his favor, in Errol Spence's favor, and Bob Arum was not really willing to accept that amount. Yeah, it was being lowballed basically quite badly, in the way that it would, they would lose money because Al Haymon is the A side with Errol Spence. Errol Spence is the A side. He brings in more. So Terence Crawford has a smaller fan base, and Bob Arum was a bit upset about this whole thing that Terence Crawford doesn't really promote himself because he didn't really have much bargaining power, because Terence Crawford hasn't got much of a fan base, and so he couldn't argue with Al Haymon, who's basically saying we're only willing to pay him a little bit more than his last fight, take it or leave it. Now, Bob Arum has been in the business for a long time. He tried to negotiate something else. It didn't get made. There's a lot of egos involved as well. Also, he's an old guy. He knows exactly how much Terence Crawford is worth, and he just wasn't willing to accept the small pittance money that Al Haymon was offering. Now, Al Haymon can do that because Al Haymon sees it like, well, I can guarantee Errol Spence gets a certain amount of money as a guarantee. I don't need Terence Crawford. Yeah, so Errol Spence can go on. If it doesn't happen, if they don't accept Al Heyman's offer, Errol Spence has enough leverage to go on and fight someone else and still make much more money than Terence Crawford. So he just offered the amount of money that he was willing to Bob Arum. Bob Arum was not happy with that amount, so the fight didn't get made. And it went back and forward, but this is how negotiations go. When you've got someone who's an A side and someone who's a B side, the negotiations go back and forward until they reach an agreement. Now, Terence Crawford was not willing to accept. He was not willing to wait because the fans were saying, "Oh, what's going on?" And he wants to make the fight, and he wasn't willing because he also thought that Bob Arum was not promoting him as much as he promotes other fighters. So in the end, as we know, he left, thinking that Bob Arum was the one in the way, when really he probably wasn't. He could have been, but he probably wasn't, basically. So Terence Crawford thought, I'll be by myself, and it should be much easier because it means less person to pay. All you got to do is pay me, basically. It's much less money, and it should be easier to do this business. Was he right? In some respects, yes. In some respects, he wasn't. It's actually more difficult sometimes if you haven't got a promoter. I tell you when it works. If you're an independent, it works if you have a huge fan base like Canelo. Canelo could be an independent and make millions of pounds because he's got a whole country behind him. Terence Crawford hasn't got that. So as an independent, he becomes a bigger risk to Al Heyman, who's already got good things set up already. He's already the A side. He's a bigger risk because it means now Terence Crawford is like promoting himself. Yeah, so if there's no guaranteed promotion, then there's going to be even less money on the back end from the pay-per-view sales. So Al Heyman doesn't want to take that risk. So for Al Heyman to feel comfortable enough financially to make, to take a risk on the Terence Crawford fight, he has to, first of all, pay his fighter Errol Spence a large sum of money, a big split, 80-20, whatever the split is. And then, what he's trying to say is he can't guarantee a really good amount of money for Terence Crawford, but he's promising him that he'll make money off the pay-per-view sales. Now, Terence Crawford, he doesn't want that. That's not going to work for Terence Crawford. They're in different positions. That's why this fight is not happening. It's not that one person is ducking another. They're in different positions. Terence Crawford can't afford to accept that. He's 35 years old. This is the biggest fight he's going to have in his life. He needs to cash out from this fight. But not so much cash out, but he needs to make sure that this fight secures his future. Yeah? So he doesn't want, Terence Crawford does not want to depend on what might happen, how much he might make off the back end. He wants a guaranteed money up front. And he deserves this. He wants a guaranteed money up front. And if they make good money off the back end of the pay-per-view, that's perfect. But he wants a guaranteed amount of money. He doesn't matter if it's much smaller than what Errol Spence is getting. As long as it's good enough for him to kind of guarantee his future, then he'll fight Errol Spence. That was the thinking from Terence Crawford. That was his mindset going into this. But you have to understand, like I said, they're in different positions. So the fight couldn't be made due to the fact that Al Heyman, being the A side, he wants to control negotiations so that he can guarantee that he makes a huge profit. And Terence Crawford is a bit too much of a risk because he doesn't have a promoter at the moment. He's not willing to take something that's a little bit more money than the last fight he had. He wants more money than that, guaranteed. And Heyman was just not willing to offer that. You see, so basically, in an interview that Terence Crawford was in, he kind of outlines this, that he went to Al Heyman and said, look, let's just meet up personally, your lawyer, my lawyer, whatever. We'll meet up and we'll make the fight happen. And Al Heyman kind of said something about his mother not being well, so he can't do that at the moment, which for whatever reason, it still means no. It's a no, basically. He's saying accept it or move on. Now, an A side can say that to a B side. It doesn't seem fair, but it's just the way it is. Terence Crawford hasn't got much leverage in that way. he doesn't bring in as much, Errol Spence can fight somebody else and still guarantee himself a certain amount of money, so the fight doesn't have to be made. That's the way the negotiations was going. So Terence Crawford, basically, he can't say, okay, I accept everything you're saying, I accept, and I'm just going to wait and see if the fight does well. Yeah, he can't afford to say that, because this is the biggest fight of his career. This is the fight that he has to cash out on. Yeah, so that his future is guaranteed. What if the fight doesn't do well on the pay-per-view? Errol Spence got a huge amount of money anyway, no matter what happens. Let's say it was a draw. Errol Spence got his money, Terence Crawford got significantly less than what he should get, and he didn't get it in the pay-per-view. He lost out. If they don't fight in a rematch, then Terence Crawford has to keep fighting at 35 to try and guarantee his future. This is their boxing career. The biggest fight of your career, you have to make sure that you guarantee yourself upfront guaranteed money. And Al Heyman was just not willing to do that. So Terence Crawford, he got an offer from BLK, I think they're called, promotional company, offering him 25 million guaranteed to fight a guy called Avanesian, who a lot of people don't know him. I've actually watched him fight. He's actually quite good. He won his last fight. He's actually quite a good fighter. Obviously, he's probably not good enough to beat Terence Crawford, but even so, they've put up £25 million guaranteed. Yeah, so that's all Terence Crawford wants. £25 million guaranteed. If he doesn't make much of the pay-per-view, he's set. His future is more stable. Yeah. Al Heyman, who's quite a wealthy man, was not willing to do that. And it's all because he thinks that he doesn't have to do that, because he's got Errol Spence making this kind of money anyway. So, they're in different positions. That's the reason why it didn't happen. It's definitely not because of Terence Crawford not wanting to fight Errol Spence or being scared. People should stop with that narrative. Terence Crawford wants to fight Errol Spence more than anything, but he just has to secure his future, and Al Heyman was not willing to do that by giving him a guaranteed basic pay. This is the reason why it happened. Now, if you think about it, Terence Crawford, once he was offered from this company this money, he also went to Errol Spence and said, look, I've got this company that said they're willing to offer us 25 million. Now, Errol Spence is not his own boss. He had to consult Al Heyman, who basically said, no, nobody's touching this fight. It's my promotion, no one's touching this fight. So in a way, he's not willing to make the fight happen. He's giving Terence Crawford no guaranteed money, a low amount of guaranteed money. That's not acceptable. What do they want Terence Crawford to do? But Al Heyman is in the position to do that. So end of the day, Terence Crawford had to take this offer of 25 million to fight Avanesian. I can't remember if I'm saying his name right, but that other guy, Avanesian, 25 million guaranteed, and he had to take the fight. And so negotiations broke down. That's the reason why it happened. Now, Errol Spence, Errol Spence, he doesn't care. It's not necessarily his fault. He has a promoter, so he can't say much. All he can say is, look, my team tried to reach out, make the fight happen. Errol Spence sees it like, you're going to get paid money from the pay-per-view, and we're paying you a little bit more than what you've made before. So that's all we're offering. But that's not good enough for Terence Crawford. Like I said before, he has to guarantee himself more money, because the pay-per-view sales is not a guarantee. If the pay-per-view doesn't do well, Errol Spence is still set up. He's still got lion's share of the money. But Terence Crawford, if he accepted it, he would have to depend on that back end money from the pay-per-view doing well, and he's got no faith in that happening, because people stream illegally. There's all sorts of illegal downloads. All sorts of things happen. Most people don't pay for fights, and he even knows that. Even Errol Spence knows that. In the interview with Terence Crawford, Errol Spence actually said, I've got a Fire Stick too. I download things. I don't pay either. Most people don't pay, and that's the reality. And that's the reason why, Heyman doesn't want to stick his neck out. He doesn't want to pay upfront money, and then Terence Crawford, not having a huge fan base, doesn't bring in good pay-per-view, and he ends up losing out. You see what I mean? So Terence Crawford basically he had to take the Avanesian fight, and that's what had to happen. That's why the fight can't happen this year. But the good thing is, I'm not so pessimistic where most people think the fight's never going to happen. The fight's definitely going to happen. It's going to happen next year. And the reason why I say that is because Terence Crawford had to take the guaranteed money this year with Avanesian. But after that fight, he'll have a little bit more leverage, because he'd already have made a good amount of money to secure his future. Terence Crawford would now be willing to accept the lowball offer that would come from the other side in a rematch, because I think Al Heyman would have to make the fight now, because the fans do not want to see Errol Spence fight anybody else apart from Terence Crawford. So now, if they don't make the fight, Al Heyman, his next fight with Errol Spence will probably start losing money, because fans will not want to watch any other fight. And so I think they'll come together, agree on something, and we'll get the fight next year. But yeah, I'm not going to make it much longer than this. It's nobody's fault. It's definitely not Terence Crawford's fault. I can't say that. Maybe Terence Crawford should have stayed with Top Rank, and maybe they would have got a deal done eventually. So in that way, you could say it could be Terence Crawford's fault. Just in the same way, you can say that it's Errol Spence's fault, because Al Heyman was the one who didn't want to make the fight with Terence Crawford, because he didn't want to believe that he could make his money back. So it's all about money. It's got nothing to do with the two fighters. One thing we do know, they both want to fight each other, but it's to do with money. And Errol Spence doesn't have to do anything special. He's already with Al Heyman. He's the younger fighter. He's getting a huge split of the guaranteed purse. He's got nothing to complain about. Do you see what I mean? Terence Crawford is not in that position. He wants that guarantee. He wanted transparency on how much he's going to make. And Al Heyman wasn't really willing to tell him that, And even if he did, it was too small. The money financials, it just didn't make sense. So hopefully we're going to get this fight next year. For now, we have to be happy with the fight with Avanesian. I'll watch it now that I understand. But from watching Terence Crawford's interview, I completely 100% believe Terence Crawford what he says. I also believe that Errol Spence doesn't have his own boss, so he can't really force anything to happen. And that's basically what happened. We move on. We look forward to the fight next year. I'm on to the next one.
Man, guess who's back? I said, guess who's back?
Once again, guys, if you enjoyed my video, please consider liking, sharing, and leaving a comment. Let me know your views, and please subscribe to my channel.